I'm Lila Montgomery, 30 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life being told I'm the kind of woman a man settles down with. Never the one he chases, never the one who stops him in his tracks. I used to take pride in that, being dependable, loyal, warm. Like it was some sort of badge of honor. Until the day Drew Whitaker looked me in the eye and said I was too plain for the life he envisioned. We'd been together for 3 years. We shared a Netflix account, a dog named Olive, and a mismatched bookshelf full of cookbooks we never used. I wasn't expecting a proposal, not yet. But I also wasn't expecting to be dumped in the middle of a Thursday lunch. One moment I was telling him about a new project at work. The next he was sipping his iced tea and saying, "Lila, I just don't see us together long term. You're sweet and stable, but I think I want something more. More." That word burrowed into my chest like a splinter I couldn't get out. He said it with this clinical calm, like he was giving me performance feedback. "You're beautiful in your own way," he added, like it was supposed to soften the blow. "But I need someone who turns heads, you know? Someone a little more exciting." I had smiled. Actually smiled. Told him I understood. Told him I hoped he found what he was looking for. Then I went home, curled up next to Olive on the couch, and sobbed until my skin hurt. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not even Harper, my best friend since college. I couldn't stand the idea of hearing someone else say the word plain out loud. I kept going to work. I kept walking the dog. I kept functioning. But inside, I unraveled thread by thread. 3 months later, I found out through a mutual friend that Drew was engaged. Engaged. To someone named Tessa, a blonde with cheekbones sharp enough to draw blood and a curated Instagram full of travel, Pilates, and bride vibes. I stared at her picture for a full minute. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt like someone else's life. Some alternate version of mine where I'd never existed. Where Drew had skipped over me like I was the filler girlfriend in his journey toward someone worth showing off. That night, I didn't cry. I poured myself a glass of wine, then another. Then I called Harper and told her everything, ending with a joke about crashing the wedding in a red dress and heels so high they'd violate health codes. Harper paused for maybe 3 seconds before she said, "You should." And just like that, a spark lit deep in my gut. Not to get him back, but to remind myself I was never the plain one. Just the one they didn't see coming. The breakup itself didn't break me. Not in the way people expected. There was no screaming, no wine bottle smashed against a wall, no dramatic airport chase. Just a quiet unraveling. A slow, almost clinical separation from someone who had once kissed my forehead like I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Drew had this way of ending things like he was narrating a TED Talk. Reasonable, emotionless, smug. That day in the cafe, I remember the way he said it, like I should be thanking him for his honesty. "I think we've just grown in different directions," he'd said, fiddling with the sleeve of his tailored jacket. "You'll be fine, Lila. You're the kind of girl who always lands on her feet." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask if he even remembered the years we spent building each other. The holidays with his family, the late nights with Olive at our feet, the time I stayed up till 3 a.m., making edits to his business proposal before his big pitch. But instead I nodded. Because that's who I was back then. The woman who made things easier for everyone else. I walked out of that cafe with a hollow in my chest, but my posture intact. I didn't chase him. I didn't text him the next day. I just vanished from his life the way he wanted me to. And for a while, that became my new skill. Disappearing. The days blurred together. Wake up, feed Olive, work, eat something frozen, sleep, repeat. Harper noticed, of course. She always does. But I convinced her I just needed space. "I'm fine," I'd text when she asked. "Just processing." What I didn't tell her was that every time I passed a mirror, I looked away. I didn't want to see the woman Drew had discarded. I didn't want to study my face and wonder if it really was too average, too forgettable, too Plain. Then came the wedding announcement. It showed up on Harper's phone first. A friend of a friend had shared the post. Tessa and Drew, standing in front of a castle in Napa, her hand outstretched with a diamond so large it could blind a pilot mid-flight. Harper looked at me like I was glass. I took the phone, studied the photo, and handed it back with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "He moves fast," I said. "Or he already had one foot out the door," Harper replied, her voice laced with rage I couldn't yet access. I didn't cry that night either, but something shifted. Something woke up, and she didn't want to be forgotten again. I used to think invisibility was something you grew out of, like braces or bad high school poetry. But I was 30 and still walking into rooms like I hoped no one would notice me. Not because I was shy, though I played that part well, but because I had been trained to believe that being easy, being agreeable, being soft was the goal. Don't take up too much space. Don't wear the dress that makes you feel electric. Don't say too much. Don't want too much. Growing up, I was the reliable one, the old soul. The girl who remembered birthdays and brought extra snacks to group projects and helped the substitute teacher take attendance. I didn't sparkle. I steadied. I didn't dazzle. I adapted. And eventually, I started mistaking those survival tactics for personality traits. By the time I met Drew, I had polished myself into something smooth and unthreatening. He liked that about me. He used to say I was refreshing, like a palate cleanser between more dramatic romances. And I believed him, right up until the day he decided I wasn't enough to keep around. The word plain kept echoing in my mind like it had its own heartbeat. It followed me when I tried on clothes, made me second-guess selfies, reminded me not to get too excited about anyone or anything. I didn't blame Drew for all of it. That word had been planted long before he came along, by exes who said I was nice but not exciting, by friends who always saw me as the sidekick, by family members who said things like, "You're beautiful in a natural way," which is code for "don't bother with makeup." But Drew? He gave it a microphone. I didn't want revenge. Not in the cartoonish movie montage kind of way. I didn't want to show up at his wedding, push Tessa into the cake, and scream, "He was mine first." That wasn't my fantasy. Mine was quieter, stronger, more dangerous. I wanted him to look at me and feel stupid. I wanted to become someone he couldn't reduce to a sentence. Someone who made people turn their heads and whisper, "Wait, is that Lila?" It wasn't about Drew, not really. It was about all the times I made myself smaller to be more palatable, about every moment I edited myself into someone else's comfort zone. Harper said it best one night, wine glass in hand, voice sharp with sisterly fury. "You're not plain. You're just surrounded by people with no imagination." So I made a decision, not to change who I was, but to become fully visible. The wedding announcement hit like a slap I didn't see coming. It arrived in the form of a glossy Instagram reel posted by someone I barely knew anymore. An old coworker of Drew's who must have assumed I was already in the loop. I wasn't. I hadn't even known he was seeing someone seriously. But there it was. A champagne-popping, slow-motion montage of Drew on one knee, Tessa fake surprised but flawlessly composed, and a voiceover from some Ed Sheeran song playing like it was their love story, and not just a template. I watched it 3 times. Not because I couldn't believe it, but because I couldn't believe how little it hurt. It didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like erasure, like I'd been snipped out of the scrapbook of his life. There was no trace of the 3 years we'd shared, no evidence of me ever mattering. I wasn't the ex you invite to the wedding. I was the one you quietly delete. The caption read, "She said yes to forever. Whitaker Wedding. 2025. Harper was at my apartment that night. She took one look at my face and put down her drink. "What happened?" I handed her my phone. She watched the video with an expression that went from bored to furious in 10 seconds flat. "He's marrying an algorithm," she said. "She looks like she was printed in a lab for bridal Pinterest boards." I gave her a tired smile. "She's beautiful. So are you. You're just not..." aggressively obvious about it. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The city buzzed outside, headlights dragging across my walls like ghosts. "You know," Harper said slowly, "he doesn't get to do this." "Do what?" "Rewrite the story. Pretend you were some dull chapter before the fireworks." "I'm not going to crash his wedding," I said. Harper snorted. "Please, no one's asking you to be unhinged. But showing up and reminding him that you exist, that you're thriving, that you're the best thing he never really saw? That's not revenge. That's reclamation." I laughed, but something deep in me stirred, a long-forgotten ember catching breath again. "You want me to become his regret?" "No," she said. "I want you to become undeniable." That night, I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked tired, washed out, defeated. But beneath that, I saw something else. A woman ready to stop disappearing. It started with a bottle of wine and a spiral I couldn't climb out of. Harper had brought over 2 bottles of Cabernet and a bag of peanut butter pretzels, her version of emotional triage. We sat on the couch, both barefoot, Olive snoring at our feet. The wedding video had gone semi-viral in our small circle, shared and reposted by mutual acquaintances who loved a curated romance. By glass 2, we were halfway through the comments section, reading things like "they're perfect together" and "goals," until I couldn't take it anymore. "He told me I wasn't exciting enough," I muttered. Harper blinked. "What?" I stared into my glass. "The day he left." That was the phrase. "You're not the kind of woman people remember, Lila. I need more spark." She set her glass down a little too hard. "He said that to your face?" "Word for word." She stood up, pacing now, like rage needed movement. "That absolute thimble of a man. You gave him everything. He got the best version of you and still wanted more glitter." I shrugged. "He wanted someone who turns heads." Harper turned on her heel. "Then we give him that. You're going to show up at that wedding and be so breathtaking it physically hurts?" I laughed. "You want me to what? Crash it in a ball gown and glitter eyeshadow?" "Number, I want you to own it. Get an invitation. Walk in like a slow-motion movie scene. Not to beg for him back, but to prove he let a diamond slip through his fingers while chasing sequins." Something about the way she said it stuck. Not cruel. Not vengeful. Just factual. "But I'd have to actually become that version of me," I said quietly. "Not just for one night." Harper's face softened. "No, you wouldn't. You already are. You've just been shrinking yourself so people like him could feel bigger." That line cracked something wide open in me. We made a list that night. Not of revenge plans, but of reclamation steps. A personal trainer, a skincare consult, a wardrobe overhaul, confidence coaching. I wasn't trying to become someone new. I was excavating someone I had buried. When I woke up the next morning, the list was still there. Scribbled on a napkin, smeared with wine and determination. And I knew I was going to do it. Not for Drew. Not even for the shock factor at his wedding. But for the moment I would look in the mirror and finally see someone worth turning heads for. Starting with her own. The first day back at the gym, I almost turned around in the parking lot. Everything about the place made me feel exposed. The bright lights, the rows of mirrors, the fit people who seemed born knowing how to lift things. I hadn't stepped inside a gym in nearly 4 years. I told myself I was too busy. The truth was, I didn't want to confront my reflection in a room full of strangers. But I walked through those doors anyway. I started with a trainer named Max. He was kind, didn't flinch when I told him I was doing this for clarity and posture, which was my polite way of saying I was doing it because someone once called me invisible. He didn't ask for the full story. He just showed me how to move like I belonged in my own body again. The first few sessions were brutal. Everything ached. I cried in the shower after my second workout. Not because of the soreness, but because I felt so far from the woman I wanted to become. But Harper reminded me, as she always does, you're not chasing a finish line. You're waking yourself up. Alongside the gym came a slow makeover. One that didn't start with eyeliner but with boundaries. I unsubscribed from Drew's sister's Instagram, finally blocking the endless updates of wedding dress fittings and cake tastings. I booked an appointment with a stylist. Not for a new look, but for a real one. One that didn't try to blend in with the wallpaper of other people's expectations. The woman in the mirror started changing, bit by bit, shoulders back, chin lifted, a spark in the eyes that hadn't been there in years. Confidence coaching felt like a joke at first. Some corporate HR holdover. But the woman I worked with, Janelle, saw through me immediately. "What would you do if you didn't believe you were supposed to play small?" She asked on our first call. I didn't have an answer, but it haunted me. By the end of the month, I wasn't thinking about Drew daily. I wasn't counting calories or obsessing over my waistline. I was moving toward something. Myself. I bought a dress. A deep emerald green slip that clung to me in all the right places. Harper whistled when I tried it on. "He's gonna pass out," she said. "I don't care if he does," I replied. "This one's for me." She grinned. That's when they always regret it, when you stop caring. The wedding was 3 months away, and for the first time in years, I was starting to feel like I couldn't wait to be seen. The shift wasn't sudden. There was no single moment when I looked in the mirror and gasped at my own reflection like in a makeover montage. It was slower than that, quieter, the kind of transformation that sneaks up on you, not because you're changing into someone else, but because you're finally returning to the version of yourself you buried to make other people comfortable. It started with posture. I caught myself walking differently, standing straighter in line at the coffee shop, shoulders rolled back in meetings, making eye contact that didn't flicker away. Then came the voice. The way I spoke up without apologizing first. The way I said no without adding 10 qualifiers. The way I stopped explaining my choices like I was asking permission to exist. But it wasn't until the 3rd month, after training sessions, late-night journaling, and one truly therapeutic closet purge, that I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't flinch. My hair was tucked into a sleek bun. My skin glowed from weeks of proper sleep and skincare that didn't come from a drugstore clearance bin. The emerald green dress hung on the back of my closet door like a secret weapon. And for the first time in my adult life, I saw a woman I wanted to be friends with. To be seen with. To be. I smiled, not because I looked beautiful, but because I finally believed it. Harper noticed the change first. She came over one evening with takeout and gasped the moment I opened the door. "Holy shit," she whispered, stepping back. "You've got that glow. The I'm about to ruin a man's ego glow." I laughed, but she wasn't wrong. I felt different. Lighter. Like I'd shed an entire life of second-guessing. And it wasn't just Harper. My coworkers started treating me differently. Strangers held doors open longer. Baristas remembered my name. One even complimented my outfit as if I were someone people actually noticed. Because I was. Drew's words still floated in the back of my mind sometimes. Not someone people remember. But they no longer stung. If anything, they motivated me. Not to prove him wrong, but to prove myself right. That I had never been plain. Just dulled. Just muted. I wasn't trying to become unforgettable to Drew anymore. I was becoming unforgettable to myself. And that, I realized, was the kind of transformation no one could ever take away. The invitation came in a cream-colored envelope, thick and expensive, with gold calligraphy that curled like it had something to prove. I found it wedged between a grocery flyer and an oil change reminder in my mailbox, completely out of place, like a diamond in a dustbin. I didn't recognize the handwriting on the front until I turned it over and saw the embossed return address. Whitaker Residence. Drew's parents. Of course. His mother always liked me. She used to call me Steady Lila, with a fondness that sometimes felt like she wished I'd teach her son how to be less of a storm. I stared at the envelope for a full minute, then laughed out loud. Harper was the first person I called. "They invited you?" she said, mid-chew from whatever snack she was inhaling that hour. Technically, she invited me. I doubt Drew even knows. Are you going? There was a long pause. I think I have to, I said. Then we need a plan. A dress, a strategy, hair, nails. That strut you've been practicing in your hallway like it's a Milan runway. I smiled. This isn't about revenge. I know. It's about closure. With cheekbones. The wedding was in 6 weeks, held at an upscale vineyard estate just outside Napa. I booked a room nearby that same night, one with a view of the valley and a bathtub bigger than my bed. I didn't tell anyone else. Not my parents, not my coworkers. I wanted to carry this quietly, like a secret mission only I could complete. In the days that followed, the RSVP card sat on my kitchen table like a dare. I filled it out in black ink. One guest. Accepts with pleasure. No hesitation. The emerald green dress had already been altered to fit like second skin. My hair appointments were booked, my nails scheduled, and the heels I'd chosen could probably kill a man if thrown correctly. But more than all that, I felt ready. Not to ruin anyone's day, but to reclaim mine. Let them have their vineyard and curated vows. I'd be the girl no one recognized. Until he did. The vineyard was every bit as opulent as I expected. Rows of manicured vines stretching across rolling hills, white tents fluttering like sails in the breeze, and a courtyard paved with warm stone and polished intention. Everything about the place screamed curated perfection. I stepped out of the car and paused, just for a moment to collect myself. This was the moment. Not the dress, not the gym, not the coaching. This, standing at the edge of my past, wrapped in emerald silk and sunlight, feeling 100 pairs of eyes flick toward me and then flick again when they realized I wasn't just another guest. I was a question they couldn't answer. I walked toward the entrance with measured steps. Not rushed, not hesitant. I had practiced this, not the walk itself, but the energy, the calmness, the presence. I smiled at the usher. He smiled back a little too long. Inside the courtyard, people turned. I felt it like heat rising. A few whispered. Others stared openly, trying to place me. I could see it in their eyes. The flicker of recognition without context. Who is she? I wasn't on the bridal party's radar yet. The ceremony hadn't started. Most guests were mingling near the rosé station, laughing under canopies, fanning themselves with programs embossed with Drew and Tessa in gold. And then, he appeared, across the courtyard, dressed in a crisp black tuxedo. Hair shorter than I remembered, but unmistakably him. Drew. His gaze swept the crowd absently at first, until it landed on me and froze. There it was. His whole body shifted, eyes narrowing slightly, lips parting just enough to breathe a name he hadn't said in over a year. Lila? I tilted my head, offered the barest smile, and sipped my champagne. He blinked, took a step forward, then stopped as someone tapped his arm. Probably his best man or a wedding coordinator trying to steer him somewhere. I watched the moment stretch, held in a kind of suspended recognition. He didn't approach, not yet. But I saw what I needed to see. Confusion, regret, that flicker of disbelief, like he was staring at a ghost who'd grown too powerful to haunt. He came over slowly, like he wasn't sure if he should, like I might vanish if he blinked too hard. People moved around us, glasses clinking, laughter rising, but in that moment, the world narrowed to just the two of us. Drew stopped a few feet in front of me, hands in his pockets, that signature half-smirk on his face. But this time it didn't land. Not on me. Lila? He said, voice lower than I remembered. Like he was trying not to cause a scene. I didn't think you'd actually come. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. You didn't want me to? He blinked. No, it's not that. Wow. You look different. I smiled, taking a slow sip of my champagne. Different how? He didn't answer right away. Just stared, the corners of his mouth twitching like he wanted to say something complimentary, but couldn't quite form the words without choking on them. Behind him, a string quartet played something elegant and unmemorable. The air was thick with blooming lavender and the weight of things unsaid. "I didn't recognize you at first," he finally said. "You've changed." "I haven't changed," I replied. "I've just stopped dimming." That made him pause. He looked down at his shoes, then back up at me with a softer expression. "You know, I've thought about calling you. So many times, just to check in. Why didn't you?" He shrugged. "I figured you'd moved on. And honestly, I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." "I didn't," I said gently. He gave a weak laugh, more breath than sound. "You really do look amazing, Lila." "Thank you," I said. "But I didn't come here for compliments." "I know." His eyes flicked toward the tent where guests were beginning to gather. "Tessa's around here somewhere. She'll probably want to say hi." I didn't answer. I just smiled again. Calm, poised, whole. "Well," he said awkwardly, stepping back. "It's really good to see you." "You too, Drew," I said. "Congratulations." He turned and walked away, but not before glancing back one last time. Not in longing, not in love, in disbelief. Because I was no longer the version of me he thought he knew. And that truth sat heavier on his shoulders than the vows he was about to say. I was halfway through my second glass of champagne when I felt someone watching me. Not the kind of watchful stare Drew had given me, but something steadier. Curious, a little amused. I turned and met the eyes of a man standing by the bar, tall and relaxed in a navy suit that fit too perfectly to be an accident. He raised his glass slightly, the hint of a smile playing on his lips. I blinked. He looked familiar. Then it clicked. Nathan Whitaker, Drew's older brother. We'd only met once, years ago, at a family brunch where he spent most of the time teasing Drew and gently interrogating me about my job in design. He'd been in the Air Force back then. Confident, effortlessly charming, the kind of person who commanded attention without trying. He'd moved to Napa to start a vineyard after leaving the military, which always struck me as oddly poetic for someone who used to fly fighter jets. And now here he was, walking toward me with that same quiet charisma, like the universe had decided I deserved at least one surprise today. "Lila Montgomery," he said, his voice rich with recognition. "I thought that was you." "You remembered?" "Of course I did," he said. "You were the only one at that brunch who didn't pretend to enjoy my mom's lavender scones." I laughed. "She still makes those?" "Religiously. They're still terrible." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the crowd humming around us. Then he leaned in slightly, eyes scanning my face like he was solving a pleasant riddle. "You look incredible, by the way." "Thanks," I said, fighting a flush. "Apparently I'm unrecognizable." He raised an eyebrow. "Who said that?" "Your brother." Nathan's smile faltered just slightly. "Ah, well, Drew's never had the sharpest eye for value." I tilted my head, surprised. "That sounds dangerously close to a compliment." "Good," he said, sipping his whiskey. "Because it is." He didn't ask about the breakup. He didn't mention the wedding. He didn't try to steer the conversation toward safe ground. Instead, he asked about my work, about Denver, about Olive, remembering the name of a dog he'd met once years ago. It was easy. Too easy. And when the announcement came over the speakers for guests to take their seats, Nathan offered me his arm with a look that said, "You don't have to walk in alone." I hesitated. Then I took it. And in that simple gesture, something unexpected shifted. Because maybe I hadn't just come here to be seen. Maybe I came here to be found. The ceremony was set beneath a white pergola wrapped in soft roses, the kind of setup you only see in bridal magazines or Pinterest boards titled Dream Wedding. Everyone moved toward their seats in a swirl of chiffon and champagne smiles. I held onto Nathan's arm, not tightly, but just enough to steady the pounding in my chest. People noticed us. I saw it in the way heads turned, the way conversations stalled mid-sentence, The way Tessa's bridesmaids suddenly became whispering shadows in pastel silk. I wasn't wearing anything outrageous, just the emerald dress, my favorite heels, and a quiet confidence that hung around me like perfume. Nathan leaned in. "They think you're a new girlfriend." "Let them," I said, my voice low. He smiled. "Your power is showing." I didn't sit in the back. I didn't hide behind a pillar or choose the seat closest to the exit. I sat dead center, third row, like I had every right to be there. And for the first time, I believed I did. Drew stood at the altar, shoulders stiff, jaw tight. His eyes scanned the crowd more than once, always flicking back to me. Tessa walked down the aisle moments later, radiant and perfect. She looked like a woman who had never been told she was forgettable. I didn't envy her. I just hoped she never learned how much it hurt. The ceremony dragged in the way most ceremonies do, vows written with the help of Pinterest, laughter cued by nervous glances, a string quartet version of some pop song they'd probably argue about years later during a fight over dinner. But I didn't watch them. I watched me. How still I sat. How present I felt. How nothing in me wanted to rewind or escape or disappear. I wasn't the ghost at this wedding. I was the storm they didn't see coming. Later, during the reception, Nathan found me again. We met near the dance floor just as the music shifted into something slow and classic. He didn't ask. He just offered his hand. I took it. He guided me to the center, placed a hand at my waist, and moved with a kind of certainty that left no room for doubt. I felt eyes on us. I felt Drew's gaze like a spotlight, confused and unreadable. And still, I didn't look away. Because in that moment, with Nathan's hand at my back and the music swirling like silk around us, I wasn't Lila, the ex-girlfriend. I was Lila, the woman he let go. And suddenly, that felt like the greatest gift he ever gave me. The reception buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but I could feel it coming before it happened. The tension, the weight of a moment waiting to break open. Drew had been circling me all evening, like a satellite unsure if it should enter orbit. I danced with Nathan. I sipped my wine. I smiled through polite conversations with people who couldn't quite place me but knew they should. And then, just as the sun dipped behind the hills and cast the vineyard in golden light, Drew cornered me. It was near the terrace, away from the music and the crowds, under a canopy of string lights that felt too romantic for the conversation I knew was coming. "Lila," he said, voice low and raw. "Can we talk?" I turned slowly. He looked good. Clean-shaven, polished. The picture of a groom on the best day of his life. But up close, his eyes told a different story. Something flickering behind the surface. Doubt. Regret. Something that had nothing to do with the woman he'd just married. "Sure," I said, calm as glass. "I wasn't expecting you," he began, and already I could hear it unraveling. "Not like this." "Like what?" He exhaled. Different. Stunning, confident. "I don't know. You didn't think I had it in me." His silence said everything. I crossed my arms, not defensive, just grounding myself. "Why are you talking to me, Drew?" "It's your wedding. You should be celebrating with your wife." He rubbed the back of his neck, looked down at his shoes like they might give him the words. I guess I just needed to say I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow. "For what? Leaving? Calling me plain? Or not inviting me to the wedding until your mother did it for you?" His mouth opened, then closed again. "I was good to you," I said, my voice steady. "I loved you fully, without conditions. And you discarded that like it was something easily replaced. I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I think about you sometimes. I wondered what would have happened if I hadn't—" "Don't," I said, gently but firmly. "You made your choice. And now so have I." He looked at me. Really looked. For the first time in years. Not through me. At me. Like he was seeing the cost of everything he'd thrown away. "You look happy," he said. "I am," I replied. But not because of you. In spite of you. Then I turned and walked away, heels clicking softly on the stone, my heart lighter than it had felt in years. And for once, I didn't look back. The terrace door clicked shut behind me, sealing Drew and his unfinished apology on the other side. I walked into the reception hall, past the champagne tower and the floral arch and all the guests dancing to some overly choreographed pop remix. But I didn't hear any of it. My heartbeat was louder, slower, calmer. I had just closed a chapter that used to define me. And all I felt was peace. Nathan was waiting near the edge of the dance floor, talking to a woman who looked like one of Tessa's cousins. When he saw me, his smile tilted slightly. Curious, but not intrusive. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't need to, he just raised an eyebrow. "Done?" he asked. "Done," I said, and the words settled in my chest like truth. We stepped outside again, this time to a quieter garden strung with lights and humming with crickets. A breeze lifted the hem of my dress and cooled the heat still lingering on my skin. "I thought it would feel more dramatic," I said, "like fire or release or something poetic." Nathan handed me a glass of water. "What does it feel like instead?" "Like nothing," I said, surprised by my own answer. Not emptiness, just space. Space where all that hurt used to live. He nodded. "Sounds like healing." We sat on a bench beneath an olive tree, the kind that looked like it had been there for generations, rooted and unbothered. I looked up at the stars, the kind you only see in places like this, far from city noise where the sky still feels like a ceiling you can touch. I was in love with a version of him that didn't exist, I admitted. And I let that version define how I saw myself. Nathan didn't rush to fix it. He just listened. "People say closure comes from conversation," I continued, "but I think it comes from realizing you don't need their permission to move on." "You didn't just move on," he said softly. "You evolved." I turned to look at him. "That's dramatic." "It's accurate." There was a long pause. The kind of silence that feels like the earth is holding its breath for you. "Would it be crazy?" I said slowly, "if I said this was the best I've felt in years?" "Not at all," I smiled. And in that quiet garden, under string lights and olive branches, I let go of every version of myself I had ever shrunk to fit someone else's story. Because this was mine now. And I was finally ready to write it, on my own terms. The stars were sharper than they had any right to be. I sat on that weathered garden bench beside Nathan Whitaker, my ex's older brother, and felt something strange settle into my chest. A calm I hadn't felt in years. Not the kind that comes after crying or after letting go. No, this was different. This was the kind of calm that comes from being seen without having to explain who you are. Nathan leaned back, one arm stretched along the back of the bench, eyes skyward. "You know," he said, "I always thought Drew was the golden boy, the one who had it all figured out." I raised an eyebrow. "Was he?" Nathan smiled faintly. "Not even close." I didn't press him. I didn't need to. The silence between us was soft, companionable, like we'd been walking parallel paths for years and only just now stepped onto the same one. He glanced at me then. Really looked. Not like his brother had. Not with hunger or confusion or ownership, but with a kind of quiet awe. "I meant what I said earlier. You look incredible tonight. But it's not just the dress or the hair. It's like you finally came home to yourself." I looked down, letting his words settle. "I think I did." And then, almost without thinking, I said, "This wasn't supposed to happen. Me being here. Sitting with you." He grinned. Number it wasn't. But I'm glad it did. We sat there a little longer, the sounds of the wedding fading behind us. When he stood, he offered me his hand. Not because I needed help, but because he wanted to offer it. I took it. And when I stood, we were close. Closer than I expected. His voice dropped. "Can I do something kind of bold?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He leaned in and kissed me. Not hurried, not hungry, just honest. And in that kiss, I didn't feel like someone's ex or someone trying to prove something or someone rebuilding herself from the ashes of being left behind. I felt chosen. And not just by him. By me. When the kiss broke, we smiled like co-conspirators. Like people who'd stumbled into something neither of us had planned but somehow already understood. I have to fly back tomorrow, I whispered. I know, he said, but tonight's not over yet. We walked back into the vineyard, the world still spinning around us. But for once, I wasn't chasing it. It was keeping up with me. I didn't expect to be the one people talked about after the wedding. But they did. Not because I caused a scene. Not because I made some grand speech or upstaged the bride. They talked about the woman in the green dress who arrived alone and left unforgettable. The one who danced with the best man. The one Drew kept staring at like he was watching his own past make peace with itself. And I didn't mind the whispers. I didn't flinch at the looks, because for once the story being told was mine. And I wasn't apologizing for it. The morning after the wedding, I stood at the window of my hotel room, coffee in hand, watching the sunlight spill over the vineyard. My dress from the night before hung neatly over a chair. My heels were kicked off by the door. My phone buzzed with messages. Some from Harper, demanding details. One from Drew's mother, thanking me for coming. And one from Nathan. Next time you're in California, let me cook you dinner. No tux, no vineyard. Just wine and something real. I smiled. Not because of the offer, but because I finally believed I was someone worth being asked. I packed slowly, savoring the last few moments of this strange, beautiful detour. When I zipped my suitcase closed, it felt final in a way that had nothing to do with travel. It felt like a door I was choosing to shut. I didn't take a selfie. I didn't post a quote about healing or growth. I didn't need to, because I didn't show up to that wedding for the photos or the revenge or even the closure. I showed up to remind myself that I am not plain. I never was. I had just spent too long with people who couldn't see me clearly. And now, I don't wait to be chosen. I choose myself. And that version of me, the one in emerald silk, standing tall with nothing to prove, is here to stay.